All right. Today on the What's in My Head podcast, I've got Peter Kelamis. Peter, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Power of technology and magic. They don't get to see, the little troubles and strifes we just went through. But just pick it up from the top, man. You played Rolf and Ed, and Eddy, one of my favorite cartoons of all time. How did you get in contact, or how did you get hooked up with Danny and then get on this show?
Well, I had actually, and I've told this story before at conventions because I get that question a lot. I read for every single one of the Eds, every one of them. Yeah. Ed, read for Ed, nothing. Double D, nothing. Eddy, nothing. So the parts were, exhausting themselves because I just wasn't getting hired. And then I went with somebody else who was auditioning kind of late in the process. And I was literally waiting outside of the studio. And then it was Terry Clausen, the director of the series, who's a good buddy of mine now to this day, comes running out and he says, "Hey, we're trying to cast for this foreign kid named Rolf, and here's the sides." So I just got the dialogue handed to me, and he's like, "Yeah, they just want kind of a nondescript, European accent of some kind," and that was it. I had about 5 minutes with it, and then just went in, and it was like, "Hello, Ed boys," and then off we went, off to the races. And 10 years later, and a number of movies and specials later, here I am talking to nice folks like yourself, years past the record date of the show. And it's just always cool to hear that people enjoyed it and still enjoy it, and that that it brings back fond memories. I get that's the comment that I think I appreciate the most at conventions, meeting people, is that they grew up with the show and they have great memories of sitting around and watching the show and laughing at the show and joking around with friends and all that stuff.
So you're actually the third person from the show I've had on. I've had Matt Hill, which was Ed, and then
nice.
I've had Mike Kubat, which was obviously longtime writer, and everybody says the same thing whenever the characters come up. And I always ask, who's your favorite to write for? Who is your favorite on set? And everybody points their fingers towards you. And
really?
So, yeah. And it's like I was telling you earlier, I mean, Rolf had my favorite insult, and something that I always throw around to my friends, whether they're white, black, blue, green, or whatever, it was the "confess to your crimes, you stale end of white bread." It is one of the most, I can't put into words. It's like, it's so like lowbrow as far as insult goes, but it's just like, it hits hard and home so well, and it's fantastic. I mean, was that off the cuff for you, or was that something that was scripted?
No. Danny was very meticulous with his scripts and his lines, and my God, he used to put the three Eds through hell sometimes because they had like just a simple line. It's like, "What are you talking about?" That was it, Yeah. 30, 40 takes, and everybody in the room is like, what the hell? What is he looking for?
Yeah.
But Danny had a very specific line delivery in his head, and you had to keep going until you got it, Yeah. And I think the quality of the product kind of is a testament to, that worked. He had a very clear vision of what he wanted. But I was lucky. For me, it was a gift every time I went in, because I knew that there's going to be some sort of Rolf gold in the script somewhere that I got to mine, and I did. I was the recipient of these great lines like that. And I still remember to this day, like, the cast would crack up. For the first number of years, they had us all in the room together. And I guess we just got into too much shit. We just too much laughing, too much joking around. And then they split us up. Like, it was like a naughty kindergarten class. It's like the Eds will record one day, and then everybody else will be on another day. But I remember those days when we were all together in the room, and God, the laughter was just, because I gear up because I knew it was a hilarious line coming, and I got to do it. So it was a treat for me. But Erin Fitzgerald, I just remember her. She would laugh her ass off, and at the end, just, "Oh my God!" At the end, barely breathing. And I was like, I know, it's right. I didn't write it, but this guy's, Rolf's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's when I started watching the show, and I told Mike this story, when this show was like hot and heavy for me, I was I want to say 6th or 7th grade, somewhere around there. And I would get up every day at 6 o'clock in the morning because I had to be at the bus at 7:30, and I liked eating a hot breakfast. Brothers and sisters, they would all eat cereal or some shit like that. But I liked eating. I'm from Florida and from the South, so I like grits and eggs, and I wanted Denny's like breakfast. So I'd always get up a little early and start cooking. And then I had gotten a cockatiel, right? I always wanted a bird.
Yeah.
Mom wouldn't let me get a pigeon. So cockatiel was what it was at. And I would always, have Cartoon Network on, and Ed, Edd, and Eddy would play. And the theme song to Ed, Edd, and Eddy, he memorized.
Whistling.
Yes.
No way.
Yes, I'm dead serious. He memorized the entire song. Yep. And what sucked is he did that the entire school year, right? Summer comes around, I get to sleep in, right? 6 o'clock rolls around, and when you send the birds to sleep, you put a little cover over them so they know it's nighttime, and they get cold, right? So I put a little blanket over them, and then 6 o'clock, it was like my eyes opened and my bird's name was Nacho, because I've always had this fascination with food. And so I named him Nacho, and then Nacho just starts kicking off the Ed, Edd, and Eddy theme song on the first
hilarious
damn day of school of summer.
That's so funny, man.
Yeah. It's always interesting on, not just what gets picked up, but what you remember from your favorite shows, being that stale into white bread, or being that my bird woke me up on a consistent basis with Ed, Edd, and Eddy. And I think that's kind of like why it hits still to this day. It's one of those cartoons that hits you in the heart.
Right.
When you were working on this, did you guys know you were onto something?
We knew we were having a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it got recorded in Vancouver, Canada. And so we couldn't even watch it for the first few years. We didn't even have we didn't even have access to it. So all this stuff was happening, south of the border, and I think other countries at that point were starting to expand. And we really didn't know what was happening. It's like this wall was up, and we're like, what's happening down there? And I remember this one year they flew us all to Comic-Con in San Diego. And that was the first kind of real face-to-face direct interaction with fans because we were in one of the sizable halls at the convention center there, and it was packed. It was packed. And we got up, and they said, introduce yourselves, and hey, I'm Matt Hill, and down there, I am Rolf. And the place went bananas, and it was like, you have these rock star moments sometimes. That was one of them for me, because it was like, it was really cool.
Yeah.
And we did signings, and people would come up and can you do this? Can you say this line? And sure, I love going to those things.
What was the craziest thing? And if you can't say it because it'll get you in trouble or anything, what do you remember the craziest fan experience you ever had when they wanted you to say something crazy?
One funny one was it wasn't a Rolf one, it was a Goku one.
Yeah.
Because I did one of the original voices of Goku.
Yep.
So I was at a convention, I had my banner up behind me, it said, Peter Kelamis, Rolf, Goku, and all this stuff. And this kid comes up, I think he was like chowing down on a churro or something, because he was like,
it's a fantastic.
And he cut, well, it is. And he comes up, looks at the banner, looks at me, looks at the banner, and he goes, you were Goku? I go, yeah, let's hear it. So then I fire out a Goku line, and he goes, must have been a long time ago. And then off he goes. Lays down his insult, and off he goes.
What a dick.
Get this little dick child. Horrible. Get him out of here.
What other profession can you possibly have where you can go to a convention you pay money to, see somebody, trying to meet the fans, shit on said person, and walk away? Like I work in the kitchen. No, I take that back. A lot of people shit on people that work in the kitchen.
Right.
Oh, it's too cold, or oh, it's too spicy, or insert whatever here. So I guess par for the course, but what a dick.
And it's happened in other areas of work that I've done. Like I was on Stargate for a couple of years on Stargate Universe, and that series was very different from the other one. So we got a lot of flack initially for whatever reason. They targeted us for the cause of the new look of the show. But I would have people come up all the time at conventions and say, "Oh, can I buy that signature?" And I'd sign it. "Oh, okay, yeah." And they'd say, "Yeah, I love Stargate. I didn't care for your show, but I loved Stargate. Thanks very much for." Okay, all right.
I loved everything that you didn't do. I mean, nothing. Well, at least I'm getting your money, I suppose. So somebody's winning.
It's a little bizarre, yeah, but
people are weird, especially people at conventions. And I'm one of those guys. If you can't tell, it's.
Yeah, you got some gear in the background there. I see it.
My wife says it's a sickness, and I'm starting to agree with it a tad bit.
Yeah.
But I like to fill myself not only with people that I like, but it's also things that make me feel good. And, Ninja Turtles and everything else in here kind of makes me feel good. So I guess it's a win. I'm still waiting on those Ed and Eddy pops to, start hitting and populating. So I can.
You know what? I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet because, there's a lot of throwback pops from various shows, and I'm just surprised they haven't taken advantage of that one yet.
Now, with everything coming back and everything, retro is in vogue now at these days. Everything comes back eventually.
Right.
You've seen it with Hey Arnold, Invader Zim, Rocko's Modern Life, Nickelodeon cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Have they approached you guys at all to possibly bring this back again for the next generation, or is it something that
I think the cast would be more than ecstatic to be able to do that. I don't know if Danny Antonucci if that's something that he really wants to do.
Yeah,
I think he wants to move on to other things, but that's just me, kind of estimating or just thinking about what he might want or not want to do. I think he ran his course on that. And I think he's moving on to other things, but it'd be great if he changed his mind. I think we would all love to jump back into that because like I say, it was so much fun.
Yeah, that is a fantastic market for it. Like I said, especially with kids that are now adults that watch this as kids,
right?
There's for sure a lot more money, especially disposable income, when it comes to people like me that grew up on this stuff, So it'd be nice to really see it come back. Now, you said you worked on Goku or worked on Dragon Ball Z with Goku, and I've actually got those back there. Those are the only animes that and My Hero were the only ones that I ever really read and watched because it's a very strange genre. And I try to find stuff that me and my kid can watch together. And Dragon Ball Z and My Hero were the ones that, we connect on the most. Cool. Was that the same kind of set where you guys were all playing in the same sandbox or you guys were all in the same area? Or is that separate since you guys were dubbing over?
Yeah, it was separate. We would go in individually and do our lines. And with that one in particular, there was so much screaming involved that after the first few episodes, they realized that we were blowing our voices out.
Yeah. Because
we would do a line and then scream for 20 minutes and then do another line and then scream for another 20 minutes. And then we started going in and they'd say, okay, we're going to do all your dialogue first and then have you scream for an hour instead. Just go straight. And then, you could record for a couple of days. It was that bad. Even Corlett, who's a great buddy of mine, same thing, the screaming would really take its toll. Yeah.
Now, because I always hear, I've asked a bunch of you guys for the voice actors, what do you guys do when you have to use that so much? Are you a tea drinker? Do you just chug honey like some people do? Or what do you do when your throat's, when you have to yell and shit? How do you recuperate?
You know what? We were kind of the earlier kind of pioneers. I'm dating myself, but we wouldn't do anything. Most people wouldn't do anything. If you had a sore throat, little chloroseptic spray or something that morning. But, I never really did anything different. I didn't do any kind of morning ritual training or anything like that. And I hope that's not coming across as arrogant. It's just we never thought to do it unless there was a problem. Mm-hmm. Obviously, people that are more professional nowadays probably take better care of their voices than we did at the time. As it does when you could go smoke a cigar in a bar and order a scotch, and you're like, I got to work in the morning. Nobody cared. We seemed to get through it okay, but nothing special. Especially after you had done the voice for a while, like when you get in there, they would early on in the recording process, they'd say, oh, do you want to hear your ref? So they would have a few lines of dialogue that they would play for you to refresh your memory. And we were on that show for so long that, after about a year or so, I was like, yeah, we don't need the refs. I think we got this.
Now, if you took out the screaming portion, right, and all you had to really focus on was normal dialogue, and you didn't have to wreck your throat,
right?
Then you look at both Dragon Ball Z and Edit and Eddy. Which one? I'm assuming it's going to be Rolf, because I just figured that character's a lot more fun to play than Goku was. But is that about right? I mean, did you enjoy Rolf more than Goku, or are they equal for different reasons, or?
No, Rolf was a lot more fun to do. I mean, just because of the nature of the character and the nature of the show, it was just, when you go to work and you just laugh your ass off the entire time you're there, and then they give you a paycheck at the end of it. I mean, it's a pretty cool place to be.
Yeah.
So, I was lucky to get the gig, and lucky to work with such an amazing group of people, because it was just fun every day. I don't know what else I could say about it. It was fun.
Yeah. Now, when looking back on that, do you have a few lines or, a few scenes of both what you liked as Rolf, but do you have scenes that, maybe Rolf wasn't in that you really liked?
There's ones that I was in that was scary. I remember when we did the Christmas special, and then I got there and they're like, "Oh, we're going to have you sing a song." And I'm like, what? Because I'm not a singer. And I had to sing the Yechmayek song, which was this mythical old lady creature that it's hard to describe what she is. but I had to launch. I think I got it in 2 takes. And I think I got lucky, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm either going to be here for 6 hours or it's going to be like 1 or 2 takes, and then it's not going to get any better. So luckily it was the 2 take thing, but the song moved really fast, and it was like, oh, it was that kind of pace. Luckily I got it done. It was like, all right, let's move past this.
Now, is it because like when I've talked to a lot of you guys, they say that singing obviously is a lot different because it's not your natural voice, and there's
right.
actors that can, and then there's actors that can't. What makes it so difficult? Is it just because it feels so foreign, or is it just more stress on your vocal cords? Or
I think I'm a horrible singer. I think that's what it was for me. Many times in shows, the networks or studios will have different people doing the dialogue that do the singing of the same character. So like My Little Pony, which I've been on a few times, many of the performers on that show have a separate actor doing their singing. Okay. So now, it's just kind of...
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just because whatever, it's not a matter that some of the people on that show can't sing. Like Shannon Kent is on that show, and she's an operatic performer. She's fantastic. So she could do it. But other ones, that's not their forte, or they just want it to sound a little different. So that's what they do.
Now, whenever I never knew that, like when they offer you guys a role and if they're singing in it, that they would cast it as somebody else. Maybe it's just something I wasn't listening hard enough to. But do they just go and try to find somebody that sounds like, would they go and find, God damn, I'm having a stroke today. Would they go and find somebody that sounds like you, or would they go and, how was that process?
I mean, we're not part of that process, but that is it. They just want somebody who's convincingly sounds enough like you singing, as you do doing the voice of the character.
Now, and then you said it, you were doing My Little Pony. What was it like meeting your first brony?
Well, I knew, brony, first brony, those are strange conventions, they're, I had actually watched the documentary first, which is called Bronies, I believe. Is it? Yes. And that was fascinating to me because it was well prior to me being on the show, but it was, when I say it's kind of a weird one, I don't mean that in a bad way. Oh, yeah. And this is the best way to convey that. A friend of mine, who's an actor in town here, had another friend of his who's a Stargate guy, and he would go to conventions with him sometimes. And then somebody told, pardon me?
Did they like his work in Stargate, or did they tell him they didn't like his work either?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think he got along good with Paul McGillian. They loved him. But they told my friend Ken, they go, oh, those conventions, those are weird, huh? And he's like, what do you mean? He goes, people get all dressed up and, they're all freaks and stuff. And then and he goes, this is the best example I've ever heard. He goes, well, you're okay with somebody painting their face green and gold and cheering for the Vikings. You're fine with that. a guy without a shirt, -10 weather, flashing his belly and screaming at the top of it. You're okay with that, but you're not okay with somebody dressing up like a pony, not hurting anybody, meeting same-minded people or like-minded people and enjoying what they like. There's nothing the matter with it. And that's probably what I realized the most when I started going to these conventions. It's like, you know what? There's nothing the matter with any of these people. A lot of them are kind of introverted. You get a lot of people that are socially awkward.
Yeah.
And I find it amazing that they have the courage and the nerve to go and make friends. They make like lifelong friends. Some of them, sometimes you have to coax them over to the table because they're standing like 20 feet away and they're looking over and like looking away and they're really insecure. And you're like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, oh, good. And then, you start a bit of a dialogue and conventions are a great way for people to just get out and meet other people who are interested in the same thing.
Yeah, it's like I didn't go to my first one probably until 2012, 2013. And I'm just a comic book guy and I love TV shows and movies and stuff like that. So, and my head doesn't work like most people does where, they can just recall, a panel on 70 issues ago that happened in February of whatever year. And I'm not like that, but going and seeing different people, but we're all there for the same cause. And I've never been in a place that's been nicer as a general consensus. It's everybody's always, oh man, great costume, or oh man, can I get a picture with you? You did great. It's
absolutely
so uplifting.
I agree.
How many times have you seen somebody dress up as Rolf?
A few.
Yeah.
A few. At Dragon Con, there was a group of people that came as essentially all the main characters, including Rolf.
Yeah.
And I got a photo with them and stuff, and it was pretty cool. Actually, one of the things that I bring to conventions is I brought it here is this guy, right? So a little secret for me, it's like one of my favorite classes in school was woodworking. I like working with wood, building things, and just I like it. So I make these. And the first time I took them to a convention, it was a Kamea-Con, which is a Dragon Ball Z convention in Dallas. And I think I had like 20 of them and they were gone in like a half an hour.
Yeah.
And I had people showing up all weekend going, do you have any more planks? And I was like, no, I don't. I didn't know they were going to be this popular. So now I bring like stacks of these things and I can't even hold on to them. I'm still amazed. Like I say, I'm still amazed that, over 20 years later, people still come up and go, I need plank. Has there
ever been a more over character that had no dialogue? And
nothing.
I mean, he was just stood there the entire, or didn't even stand there. He was held there the entire time.
He was held there the entire time. It was fantastic. I remember when they first described plank to me, because they wanted me again to read for all the characters. I'm like, what's this character like? And they're like, well, he's kind of a loner and he carries around a piece of wood and the piece of wood's his best friend. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll pass. I'll do somebody else. I don't know about that one.
That character's so great, and so is Rolf. But one I really, really like as well with this show was Jimmy. And Jimmy's revenge was one of when he was just like, his hair was all greased back. All he was missing whenever he came on the scene was just him snapping his fingers, walking over to somebody. That you very rarely do you see like all these different eclectic characters, right?
Yeah.
And it not feel forced or it not feel like, like just jumbled or whatever. Everything was just so cohesive. Everything flowed so evenly.
Yeah.
And was all of these characters flushed out completely by Danny, or did he get anything else from you guys? Or
I think he got what he needed at the auditions, and he's because a lot of times you get a description of the character. If you're lucky, you get a photo or a sketch of the character. That's what I benefit from the most.
Yeah.
Because if I see a character and go, okay, this is what I think this person's going to sound like. So I think during the audition process, he got what he wanted. But it's always really cool the first day you're in. Episode 1, where you get to hopefully be in the room with people, see them do their thing. It's really cool to see words turn into entities in front of your eyes, and it's really cool. And you're talking about Jimmy. That was voiced by Keenan, and when he was doing it, he was like 15 years old, I think, when he started the show. So it was like his first gig. He's 15, this kind of big, tall kid, lanky and just really quiet. And then, so it was perfect to hear him, be these, it was like, that's him,
Who I can't, my brain's running a blank, but who played Ed's sisters?
The Kanker sisters?
No, Ed's sister. Was it Sarah?
Oh, Sarah. Yes.
Yeah. Who do you remember who played her?
I think there were two, and I'm gonna look this up to refresh my own memory because
She scared the hell out of me.
Oh no, sorry, no, Sarah, Janice Jode, Janice, who was great, and again, she's this lovely young lady, and she just erupt into this manic assault of vocals, and it would. You're right, it would scare you.
It's always funny when you guys get, and I've said it hundreds of times, and people are probably tired of hearing it. When you guys get a character, it's two-dimensional, right? It's flat,
right?
And then when you guys get it and you guys put your spin on it, you put you into that character. It really makes them three-dimensional. What were some of those but what were some of those elements in that character Rolf that you really just latched onto instantly? What made him so fun?
I mean, for me, I come from a Greek background. My parents are first-generation Greeks in the country. So when you go anything above that in the lineage, my grandparents didn't speak a lick of English. They were small villagers in Greece. So a lot of my relatives there were came from the same kind of background. So the whole idea of Rolf having meats and goats and pigs and stuff all over the place. I remember those images as a kid visiting my distant relatives in their very small towns that they lived in, farmers. And so that part I connected with right away. And having an accent, I grew up hearing accents. I mean, my parents had thick Greek accents. And so that was kind of second nature to me. So that part, maybe that's what drew me to it, or maybe that's what landed me the part, is I was just used to that.
Now, I didn't know you were Greek. I actually work in a Greek restaurant. What's your favorite Greek food?
Oh man, tiropita. I like tiropita. Moussaka is a great, but the chicken souvlaki is chicken souvlaki dinner with the rice, potatoes. That I could eat that every day with a big glop of tzatziki on the side. Right?
We've been the place I work at is called the Greek Village in Lake Mary, Florida. And me and my wife, we actually went to our first date before we were dating. It was like she worked for my mom and I worked for my mom. And that's kind of how we met. And then we've been going there for 13, 14 years now at this point.
Cool.
And then they offered me a job. And I'm like, my other place let go of us because of COVID. So yeah, let's go here. I've never worked with Greek food before. I've eaten a lot of it, and then first day crash course of just learning everything. One, I learned I couldn't cut Euro meat to save my life. Two, I didn't realize when we make tzatziki, we make big 5-gallon buckets worth of yogurt. We generally do 2 of those. And then my hands smelt like dill and cucumbers and this is after wearing gloves. It smelled like dill and cucumbers for probably a good 3 days after.
Right.
Fantastic food, man. We have the chicken souvlaki on the menu. The pasticcio is another one we do.
Yeah.
There's just a whole bunch of this stuff that you start naming off. I start smelling it now, and so.
And your first day of work, it was probably like, this is where we keep this. This is the garlic chamber with this just garlic in here.
Well, the first day was it was interesting because I sat down, and the guy's his name is Eddy. He was born in Greece, came over here, I think around middle school age, right? So he was, and he's a very sweet guy, very nice guy. And he was like, I just want to warn you about the lady that works back here because she's from Albania. She's very protective, and she's very scary. So be careful. She's all of 5. She is essentially female Rolf. Just very scary, but she's a very sweet lady. She's warmed up to me quite a bit, and me to her. So
that's great.
It was a nice little like I said, every time I see her, that's the character I think of. I think of Rolf. But
Well, I got to to use my relatives as a voice once. Well, probably more than once, but once very specifically.
Mhm.
It was a show called Class of the Titans, an animated series, and I went in again, read for a few of the male roles, like it's a young Zeus, and it's based on the Greek gods and everything. And then they had Zeus's grandmother. And I read a bunch, and they're like, "Okay, anything else?" And I said, "Yeah, I wanted to read for Zeus's Hercules' grandmother." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "No, I'm serious. I want to read for." And they're like, "Okay." So I just basically did my grandmother. It's like,
Oh, Hercules, you look so tired. Why don't you go to bed?
so it had some Rolf isms in there, but it is an impression of my grandmother. And then I got the part.
Now, you brought up Zeus, and we're trying to get something on the menu. We don't know what it's going to be. It has to be a liquid, a drink, or it has to be some kind of sauce.
Right.
And we're trying to name it just so we could use the name. It's called Zeus Juice. Yeah. And we haven't figured out what we wanted to do yet, but we want to get something on the menu where we can call it with Zeus Juice.
Right.
But when you were doing this character, when you were doing the Rolf character, and then even Hercules' grandmother, and you were picking out things that you heard or you experienced or you saw,
Right.
did it go like deeper than that? Were you just trying to, I don't want to say pay homage, but like, you obviously want to show where your roots are from. You want to bring those past experiences and those experiences you've had with your family.
Sure.
Was that always on the forefront of your mind whenever you think of a character, or was it just specific characters?
No, that's a really good question. No, you do. I mean, I remember, the moments with Hercules' grandmother. It's like where there's touching moments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in this comedic cartoon, where she's kidnapped by the evil guy. It was played by David Kay, did the voice of that one. And she would do something, and he's like, "Old lady, sit back and just let." And then she was like,
You're a very mean man.
and it's got this ingratiating, just sweet old lady thing, just giving him crap back.
Mm-hmm.
And all those that was my grandmother. Although my grandmother was nasty, you didn't want to cross my grandmother. Greek grandmothers, just you do them wrong once, and it could take them years, but they will figure out a way to return the favor.
Oh man, Greek and grudge go hand in hand. Is that what you're saying?
Oh man, just it's lethal.
Yeah. When you would do these characters, do you see something in your head when you're doing these characters, or are you just picturing what this character would do at that point?
Pretty much what they would do at that point. And like I say, the most useful tool, I think most voice actors would say this, is just having a vision, an image of the character. Right away, kind of what you're dealing with. Sometimes they tend to go against type sometimes. And my first big series was something called the Roswell Conspiracies. And I played this massive kind of ghost hunter, like FBI kind of agent. Okay. Who was huge, but it was just my normal voice. So, and I don't have a deep voice. So still to this day, I'll look at the cartoon and go, yeah, it almost seems a little off, but it fits for some reason. So they knew what they were doing. But typically the sketch or the drawing is your ticket in.
Now, what is it about that? Is it just like, is it easier to see? I mean, when you get a picture and a description, what are generally the descriptions like? Do they just give you bullet points, or?
Sometimes it's bullet points. Sometimes they say, they start off easy, male, age, and other times they'll throw in like sound alikes, like he sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, sounds like Steve Buscemi, or Joe Pesci, or something like that. Sometimes they want to go that route, and other times they just give you a description. It's like, okay, he's a grizzled army guy. Has seen some horrible things, and it's like this is more of a video game description of things that you would get, and then you got to go there in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, what's easier for you to slip into? Is it that voice acting role? Because I know you've done video games too, correct?
Yeah.
Now, is it generally easier to slip into somebody that's more cartoony than something that's probably playing off as a more serious role, like the army guy you were saying, or?
I love doing accents. I started doing stand-up. That's how I started getting into the whole entertainment industry, was doing stand-up. Yeah. But even as a kid, I would do impressions all the time. Watching show. This is again dating myself, but way back, the Carol Burnett show, Rich Little show. This is like mid 70s or early 70s, where I was like, 5 or 6 years old, but I would watch these shows and I'd do impressions of, I was 6 years old doing like Richard Nixon impressions, not knowing who the hell he was, and confusing kids in the playground. Like, why is he doing? What is he doing? But for me, accent is it. Anytime I can slip in an accent, I'm going to do it.
What's your favorite accent to do?
I love New York. I just got off of a shoot where I played a Louisiana attorney, and they kept saying, "Hey, no, yeah, can we have less accent?" And I kept trying to sneak it in, because it's when you have a line like when the word "bayou" is there, how can you not slip into this when you're saying a word "bayou"? It happens.
Yeah.
And they just run in less. I'm like, all right.
I mean,
and then I have a role coming up where I get to throw on, a thick New York accent. And the second you do that, the hands start flying. It's a whole body thing. And I find the physicality. I can't stop moving around like that character physically when I'm doing the voice. That's why sometimes when you see some behind the scenes things of people doing voice acting, they're moving like they're moving and shaking.
Now, have you ever watched, the shows you've done, and then especially when it comes to cartoon and animating, do they ever pick mannerisms from you, or can you tell like, oh man, that's for sure how I hold my hand or how I accentuate?
Yeah, I did one called Action Man years ago, and we did the voices, and the first time we saw the computer generated characters, they looked amazingly like ourselves.
Yeah.
Mine had slightly longer hair, but it was essentially very close to what I looked like at the time. And it was like, wow, cool. And they intentionally came into the studio and filmed this, attempting to grab those motions. Okay. So a lot of times they will do it intentionally.
Now, when they do that, do you have to wear anything special? Like you always see the little green dots on people, or do they just watch?
No, they just watch. That's like a motion capture is what you're referring to, where they actually physically grab. They generate that digitally on a screen and use your actual movements. One funny one, years ago, I was reading for the Godfather video game as it was coming up. And so read a bunch of the characters. I thought I was going to go for, Pacino's character. And I was like, nah. And then Sonny's character came up. I think Pacino's character was already taken. And then I thought, I'll try Sonny, which is James Caan. So I worked on the mannerisms, and it was a motion capture voice combination. So so then I went in and did it, and it went quite well. And they're like, wow, yeah, that was really good. So then I waited, and then finally called my agent because I hadn't heard anything. And he goes, he calls them, gets back to me, and he goes, yeah, you didn't get the role of James Caan because they gave it to James Caan. So they gave it to him. And I was like, oh.
Well,
all right then. Yeah, I guess he would do better than I would.
I guess he plays himself better than I would.
Yeah.
I see where you're going here. That was a fantastic game. Excuse me. It was one of my favorite movies of all time was The Godfather. And I wanted to be in the mafia before I knew what the mafia was. My grandpa, great guy, but he showed me movies like Goodfellas, Casino,
there you
Godfather. So I used to think, because I'd pretty much fall asleep, 15 minutes into the movie when I was younger, and all I ever saw him do was eat great looking food, play dominoes. So I was like, I want to be in the mafia too.
Yeah.
I did 4 or 5 years of Italian in high school. Sadly, it's not like riding a bike. You can get back on and ride a bike. If you don't have anybody to talk to, I can understand and pick out some words and kind of, get through some things if I see it. But the whole intention of me watching or going to Italian class was I didn't have to watch The Godfather in subtitles anymore.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but great 4 years, but it's 4 years I'll never get back unless I, actively go back and try to get into it.
It's a good story. It's a good story.
But when you were saying you got into the industry by doing stand-up, who were some of the guys you looked up to, guys and girls you looked up to as far as comedians?
Early on, when I was very young, watching it on TV. You go back to Lucille Ball, like I say, Carol Burnett was unbelievable, and Tim Conway on the show, because that was like the first kind of variety show that I'd seen, where it was like these funny people got to play different characters, different sketches every night. And it was like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And then heading into that, you know, the early days of Saturday Night Live, there's the Belushis and all those guys. That was fascinating to me, that you could play these hilarious characters and switch them up. But when I started actually doing stand-up, I mean, guys at the time, Paul Reiser, Ellen DeGeneres, Jay Leno, George Carlin, all these people were around, and they were like, the late 80s was kind of like a comedy explosion.
Yeah, it boomed.
You know, so they were just comedians everywhere, and there's dozens of them. I remember growing up just watching and just love. I just love watching it. Yeah.
Now, I'm a huge comedy buff. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, if you had to pick 4.
Oh, I'd say Lucy. Okay, I'm going to go 2 females here, because I think Lucille Ball and Cara Burnett are there. They have to be.
Yeah.
And as far as the males go, it's like, you know, Bill Cosby before he did the raping.
Yeah.
You know, before that, if we could go back in time and cut it off there, if we just want to talk about him comedically, because we certainly don't want to talk about him now.
No.
Comedically, he is a genius.
Yeah.
You know, at the time, groundbreaking, incredible stuff. And I don't know. It's almost like I almost have to answer this question, but you know, decade by decade, because I think it changes. But when you go back to some of the groundbreakers, you know, like Lenny Bruce, I wasn't old enough to be able to see him before my time. But groundbreaking stuff. Yeah. Same thing with Richard Pryor. It's just stuff we never seen before. Eddie Murphy Raw. I remember me and my friends putting that tape in, and just we couldn't breathe. You know, you look back at it now, and it's like, wow, it's certainly not appropriate for today's standards, but at the time, we thought it was one of the funniest things we've ever seen. You know, so decade to decade, you see changes, I think, and necessary changes. I mean, there's stuff that comedians talked about, you know, in the 50s and 60s, and Don Rickles to this day, one of my favorites. Politically correct now? Hell no. But at the time, hilarious.
Yeah.
And it hilarious for decades and decades. I had the pleasure of seeing him in Vegas, I think 2 or 3 times. Prior to him passing away, and we loved it. You know, I just love stand-up of pretty much all kinds, but people that do like character stuff is something that I've always been drawn to. Like Robin Williams, who I got the pleasure to improvise with a couple of times when he was filming up in Vancouver years ago.
Yeah.
And he used to drop by one of the clubs that we all used to perform and do sets at, and he would just drop in, and you know, you turn around, and it's like, oh, hello, mind if I do a set? We're like, yeah, I think we can fit you in. I think we got some space. Yeah, I think we got some space.
All-time favorite actor of all time was Robin Williams. I mean, one of the first comedic movies I ever remember seeing was Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
And then we just shy of a 10-year-old son, and we just showed it to him 3 months ago. Yeah. We're just sitting there, and I'm dying laughing, and he's looking over. He's like, "You think this is funny?" And I'm like, "Listen, you're my kid for sure, but I am going to get rid of you." There's some things he laughed at, but it was just it's in a day and age where everything is CGI'd now. That it doesn't, like, I guess most kids just won't look at it and be like, "Oh man, they did something revolutionary here." I mean,
right.
It was a mask, but you know, I like that old school, that Rick Baker, that Monster Maker. I like that style. I don't like everything's got these little green dots, you know, the CGI.
No.
It just doesn't seem as real. And then going back to the comedians, I do think it's better to do it like decade by decade or era by era. Because if you look at any stand-up today, and it's just my personal opinion, nobody is beating Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, or Chris Rock off the top.
No. And you've hit, you know, the 3 royalty.
Yeah.
Actually, just like 2 nights ago, we were watching Chappelle on My Next Guest Needs No Introduction, Letterman's Netflix. It was great. Yeah, it's phenomenal, and he truly is. Yeah, it's incredible. And again, it's disappointing that these guys have done what they've done. But Louis C.K. Again, prior to all the shit, it's just brilliant comedian. and it's unfortunate that their past took a horrible turn because, you look back and there's some brilliant talent there, but of course it's eclipsed by their later activity,
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy how and I'm not, diminishing what anybody went through for anything, because there's some stuff out there that, we haven't,
Right.
this was horrific.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy how one horrible thing or one I just didn't think, or one I was like, oh man, I was just thinking of something else.
Well, one example that was Michael Richards from Seinfeld, when years ago he was at the Laugh Factory, and then the crowd was kind of interacting and stuff, and then he fired out I think it was the N word.
Yeah, he
repeatedly, and then it was one of these, what were you thinking moments. But yeah, that cost him severely, and again, just bad decision. I don't. This happened a while ago. I don't know him personally. He doesn't seem like a bad person. I think he was trying to be funny with interacting, and obviously it went horribly wrong. But like you say, sometimes there's just bad decisions that are made along the way that can be very costly.
And then just today and age, everybody's got, one of these damn things. They can record you at your worst possible time.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was in high school and university, thank God they didn't have, everybody had a smartphone where you could record everything.
Everybody would be locked up right now.
Yeah, because everybody's an idiot at some point. Obviously, there's a fine line where it goes from idiot to incarceration, but we've all done stupid things.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the nature of the course, but we also got to have it where, people have done stuff that's wrong, to an extent. There's some things you just can't come back from, and people just won't accept murder being top. I don't think I could ever trust anybody that possibly, that had been accused of and then found guilty of raping somebody. But, to an extent, there's got to be some kind of, forgiveness. Even people that go to jail, they do their time, yet they're still looked at as that felon. Everybody, is quick to forget some stupid shit, but they want to hold on to some stuff that they paid for, type of thing, if that makes any sense.
And like you said, in this day and age, there's very little room for error. If you
everybody's perfect, apparently.
Right. Yeah. So it's a tough environment, even comedically. I don't do as much stand up now, but I mean, there's a lot of comics I know that obviously used to do jokes 5 years ago, even that can no longer do those jokes. Not that they were vicious or mean, but content wise, even if you're introducing the subject, people are like, whoa, you can't do that anymore.
Now, when you were starting out, because you said you started out doing stand up, obviously things have severely changed. And I still feel like comedians they're like the last of the Mohicans, if you will, the last kind of people that have that freedom of speech, regardless if you agree with it or disagree with whatever the comedian is saying. They're like I said, they're the last frontiers, or the last frontier of that freedom of speech. When did you notice that that's starting to like tick into cartooning and stuff like that? Did you ever notice that, or that
it went from where? Sorry.
So like you guys were very free to do a lot of stuff back in the 90s, 80s. When did you start seeing that bleed in for you, at least, that we're like, we got to ring this stuff back in? This is a little too on the nose. We can't say that type of stuff.
Okay. I'd say, I don't know, maybe say 10 years ago, 7 to 10 years ago, where I did a lot of accents. Like I was saying, I love accents. So I'll do an Asian accent or an East Indian accent or a Greek accent or whatever it is. And for me, there was never any ill will behind it.
Yeah.
And for me, my personal barometer for doing an accent was, am I putting this person in a demeaning situation because of the ethnicity that they have? So I never, in my mind, never did that. I had very few, if any, complaints about accents. Sometimes people would ask, "Hey, what you did?" And then I would explain it. Oh, okay. So I had very few issues, even though I did a lot of characters. I think it's how you do them. If it's like, oh, this person's this, and that means they're good at math and they can't drive because they're this. No, that's bad. Yeah. But I would tell a story where I ran into this person, and then this is I just become them, and then finish the story. And I just find that it colors the story better and lets me draw the picture of the whole thing to the audience better. So I don't think I was offensive, you know. That's kind of my style of stuff.
I mean, you can only do so much, and you can only do what you can really do at the end of the day.
Sure.
I mean, just me being the way, I mean, I don't have an issue with anything really. I mean,
Yeah.
As long as everybody's nice, I mean, it doesn't really seem, and it's a difference between we have to be nice or, you know, busting balls type of thing. Because I think that's what a lot of people go after. Because if you see half the stuff that me and my friends sit here and talk shit about to each other, you would think we really hate each other. So just like I said, taking that little insight or taking anything out of context is really, you know, really bad. But just a segue so we get out of this murky waters, if you will. You said you like doing accents. Was there an accent that you just could not get, or it took you so long to get?
South African.
Yeah.
Up until District 9 came out, you didn't hear a lot of South African. You heard it occasionally, and it's a very strange one. Until the actor, and I always screw up his name, Chartro, the guy that was the main actor in District 9, Chartro. I have to look it up because I keep screwing up his name. But yeah, the second that movie came out and it was set in South Africa, and he's like, well, you know, you go to the prawns here, right? And that popping sound that you hear, right? That's the baby prawns, you know, cooking in the fire. And it's like, sometimes when you can't get an accent, you hear somebody do it and you're like, that's the code breaker. That's what it is. You know?
You needed. So I tried out when I got out of the military. I tried. I'm looking up this guy's name now. Charlton Copley.
Charlton Copley.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry if you're watching. I'm pretty sure you're not. You're, you know.
No, he's a fantastic actor, but until, like I say, when you actually heard it at length, that's, like I say, it's code breaker stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say code breakers. When I got out of the Navy, I was told I wouldn't really be able to do much because I got hurt. I got a little hurt.
Okay.
You know, so I was told, hey, you're probably not going to want to do the profession you're trying to do, which was cooking at the time. Okay. So I was like, okay. And then I had some friends that were in the computer industry. And this is when I found out I was really stupid. I tried computer classes and just nothing clicked at all. Right. And then you start bringing in, I would see pieces. So I would see like 1 and 2. I wouldn't see that plus sign to see what they wanted me to do or that equal sign. Okay. So it's always funny hearing somebody say, I couldn't get this because it's a piece of code or a piece of data. Shit, I went through the same thing. I couldn't get it because 1, I don't know computers. I don't care about computers. And 2, I was missing that this number equals this number. Right. Is it just as hard? When did you start doing that South African, or when did you start trying that South African, and how long did it take you to really nail?
After seeing the movie, I think I could do authentic enough version if I had to do it for a character, say in an animation thing. I mean, I'm not 100% on it because it's a very difficult accent. And sometimes you hear combinations of accents and those are really hard. I remember being in Scotland a few years back on a film, and I went to a comedy club there, and there's, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but it was this East Indian comic who had a thick East Indian Scottish accent. Ooh. And I remember other people were laughing at his jokes, and I was just listening, just going, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. And it's like, I can't do that. I can do one and then the other, but I can't combine those two. They're opposite spec. It was just the strangest thing to hear. It was really cool.
Now, I don't know if it's just me, but like whenever I talk to somebody, and if I talk to them long format, especially face to face, like I'll pick up not so much their mannerisms, but I'll find myself doing like almost mimicking, right?
Sure.
When you meet somebody that has an accent, do you have to like consciously say, hey, don't try to do this voice, or is it just even flowing, or how does that work?
Oh, I know. I log it. I mean, I'm going to steal that shit later down the road. I just guaranteed. Yeah. Now,
have you ever caught yourself, like if you're talking to somebody that's like, say you're talking to the attorney from the Bayou,
right.
Have you ever just started speaking like he speaks to him, or is that something? Or her?
You know, socializing afterwards, sometimes these conventions, I remember we were on on the floor at Dragon Con a few years ago, and for whatever reason, I was dressed as Han Solo, but we decided we were going to talk Scottish for the rest of the night, so that's what we did. And certain people would hear it and they're like, "Oh my God, that accent! Listen to that." But like, every time you convince somebody, it was like you'd score a point, right? It's like, oh, okay, all right, we convinced them. Let's keep moving on.
How often do you order in a different accent when you go through a drive-through or anything?
I don't do it too often.
No?
No, I've done it before.
No.
Not for a while. That's fun.
You have kids?
Yeah.
Did they do that painting behind you?
Yeah. Well, you know what this was our daughter's birthday from about 2-3 years ago. And it's a big canvas and we cut it up into squares, and all her friends came in and they got a square and they did a certain piece of art for her on that square. So it's a pretty cool piece of art.
That's awesome. When obviously you guys read to your kids, I'm sure, like most parents do. Did she ever look at you whenever you try to do a different voice and say, "Daddy, just do regular voices," or was she all for the voices?
She liked them. Sometimes she didn't. And then I did a bunch of Barbie DVDs and you know, my wife would go, "Oh, Kreider, that's Dada." And she's like, "No." No, it's not. So she'd get upset sometimes. Like, no. Especially if the character was a little bit mean. She didn't like the association that I was doing that character. So.
Oh, that's sweet, though.
I'm going to have to wrap up soon here because I've got to run. My battery's going to die, but I can plug in if we want to go a little bit.
Nope, that's perfectly fine because I got to get my kid to karate in here just a little bit. So we'll end with the same question I always ask everybody. When it's all said and done and you've taken this microphone for the last time and pushed it up, you know, when you hear the term Eddy and Eddy or Rolf, what thoughts come to your mind or what emotions come to mind?
Just laughter, if I had to put it one word. And that's us laughing. The fact that everybody else thought it was funny, that's icing on the cake.
Did we die?
But like I said, anytime you get to go to work, anytime you get to go to work and at the end of the day going, "Wow, that was a great day," and it doesn't feel like work, you're in a good place, no matter what your profession.
Well, I can't figure or say any better way to wrap it up at that point, man. I've been a fan of you and this show for so long. I really appreciate everything you've done. Where can people find you, or where can they find out if you're working on something new that we can plug and push people towards you?
It is peterkelamis.com, but I've been revamping the site for a few months, and it'll be up again very soon. But it's peterkelamis.com, and I'll do updates there. But I think follow me at Peter Kelamis on Twitter and at Peter Kelamis on Instagram. Nice and simple. And I usually post what's coming up on those two platforms.
All right, man. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Peter. This has been at In My Head Pod. We are out of time, and we'll catch you down the road. Thanks again, Peter. I really appreciate it. You have a great day and stay safe.
You too. Take care.
Thanks, brother.
This podcast was presented by the Epic Sewers Podcast Network, the home of all your pop culture podcast needs, with shows like Epic Tales from the Sewer, the Spoiler Force Podcast, CreatorCon Q&A, Comic Watchers, and the What's in My Head podcast. Follow us on this journey and get down and nerdy as we bring you the best in pop culture.